I've been in and around the fire service for 30 years, and a little over 30 years, and I've talked to a lot of smart people, and I've heard that we're on the tail end of a 40-year fire weather pattern. And if you go back 40 years, there were similar weather patterns happening, and several areas in the Western Hemisphere are in a drought type situation. So as a result of that, and there's other things that play into it as well. One of the things that I learned when I was over in Kauai, a week and a half ago, was the fact that peely grass is not being replanted. And that's and the invasive grasses. I read the study that Jack sent me the other day, and it was really interesting. And it showed that that these non-native grasses are kind of taking over, and they're resistant to fire, and they're drought resistant. So
and that, like, guinea grass is our biggest invasive grass.
Yeah.
And it is like a prize fighter against a white belt, in terms of peely grass against that. So peely grass would have a very big challenge overcoming guinea grass, but I mean, they try, but
sure.
It's certainly worth a try.
It is. I mean, it's and so we're looking at things. We're innovators, and we create solutions to problems. And if it's a possibility for us to to add a seed, a peely grass seed to a one of our retardants, and it makes sense and it works, we'll definitely take a strong look at something like that.
Okay, so why don't you tell the listeners about what Komodo-Fire is? And I see that we have Shawn Sahbari coming in right now. Hi, Shawn.
Hi, Felicia. How are you?
It's actually Shawn is the CEO of Komodo-Fire Systems, and I think it's this would be a great question for him, since it's his company, and I think he'd like to weigh in on that.
Oh, Chris was over here at our Fire Chiefs Association meeting. Did a great job, by the way. And I'm a county council person, is the other hat I have, besides being a talk show host. And we have Alana and Marshall are right in here with us. Wow. And it might be that our fire chief is listening in. I think he's planning to be listening in. So that's Michael Gibson. Awesome. Does a great job, and maybe some of the people from our county. But so I would say that I was so impressed with your product. I ran and got Kaeo Kinoshita, who is our fire prevention specialist. I used to be a retailer. So I see that you have some retail products that are like almost like little fire extinguisher canisters.
Yes.
And those were great. Like, if I still had my stores, I would just put them, even though I'm not even in that business of surf and skate shops, but anybody can be dealing with fire. And right now, after we had our Lahaina fires, we are a lot more aware of the problem that could happen. And why don't you tell the listeners what Komodo-Fire is, and then how you came up with it, so that everybody knows what we're talking about.
I don't know if you want to hand the microphone to me. You may not get it back.
All right. Well, I'm handing it to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. And yes, Shawn Sahbari, I'm the president, CEO, founder of Komodo-Fire Systems. I'm an engineer by education. I've been in material science all my adult life, mainly catering to Silicon Valley companies, high-tech companies, people that make displays, disk drives, memory chips, mainly semiconductor and electronics. And that industry obviously went through maturation. And after about 2005, we saw most of silicon leave Silicon Valley. So it went to, Asia and offshore manufacturing. And so at the time I was kind of in between jobs, and we had kids, my wife and I, and so had to make a decision on working on projects that were a little more immune to being kind of obsoleted. And so, and when I looked at the construction industry, when I looked at the building industry, I noticed that the cost of 2x4s and sheetrock and, roofing materials kept going up, 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 even though the economy was going down, the stock market was going down. So I said, well, that's a good field to be in. Let's take some of the knowledge in materials and apply it to, this industry. And so we didn't set off to make fire preventive or fire retardant products. It actually, Komodo was, it may sound cliche, but was somewhat of an accident. And we had a different kind of a problem, and we were trying to solve that problem. And it led itself into what is now Komodo. So I had to learn a lot about firefighting. I had to learn a lot about fire. And so that's kind of in a nutshell. What Komodo is, we looked at the existing materials. There wasn't much technology. There wasn't, I'm used to 3-month, 6-month product life cycles. So if you think of your iPhone, as soon as you get your iPhone, they're already talking about the next generation and the next release. So very rapid product life cycles. And when I looked at the incumbent materials that were being used on wildfires, really there had been no advancement for over 6 or 7 decades. Yep. And so we kind of set off to come up with a cleaner, a greener, we have an unrelenting commitment to the environment. For us, it's not a marketing campaign. We don't just use that to say that we're eco-centric or very green, eco-friendly. I grew up in California. I went to school in California. I've had a lot of fire executives and chiefs that have kept my feet close to the fire, and we have learned just through product development and a very deliberate approach to using benign ingredients, to using plant-based ingredients wherever possible. We don't even allow anything that is questionable into our facility. And really it's because, I have to pay to have it disposed. So
I have a question just
Yes.
to tie it together. So a long time ago, I used to work for Intel. And so they make semiconductors. And so are you talking about like clean room technology where they put semiconductors together so you can't have any kind of dust in there or anything? Is that where you're putting this overlay? No pun intended. You'd have overlays in making microchips.
Yeah, so Intel, TSMC, they've been in the news recently. I was at their most recent fab in Arizona that's being built. It's actually a mega city that they're building. Intel in Chandler was a customer, Intel in Hillsboro, Intel here in Santa Clara for years, decades. They were customers. And yes, particulate-wise is one form of contamination, and even ionic contamination. Those are, we're getting technical, but
yeah,
even before that, the industry as a whole, because electronics are so ubiquitous, whether it's your laptop or your phone or your AirPods or your flat panel TV, they're everywhere and everybody's got them. So we learned early on that we had to make the products that were the building blocks very clean. In fact, back in the early 80s, there were lawsuits with IBM and pregnant women using some solvents on the production line that had potential birth defects and embryo toxicities and so forth.
So this is all important relative to what could potentially be toxic. And I want to let you know that I'm really happy to see that we have joining us. We not only have our Fire Chief Mike Gibson listening in, but we also have Reiko Matsuyama, our County Managing Director, and
Sorry.
I think we lost you, Felicia.
Yeah,
Okay,
there
so
you are.
we have
There you
we
are.
have some people on from our county even listening, so I'm gonna bring it more directly to fire. I kind of brought you down the clean room alley for a minute there, Shawn, but so let's talk for people who maybe weren't at that event. This is a product that can be sprayed on houses, fields, a burning fire, like I saw your video that's got the example of putting it on a mattress that's already been lit on fire with probably kerosene or something. I believe there was video with lithium. Like lithium is another really problematic element. We saw fence lines where one side was just burned to charred earth, and then the other side was uh green. And so tell us what your product is, both in something that can be sprayed in a can, or how do you make it such that what's in the product? You don't have to give me the proprietary information, but how does this work? Because it seems too good to be true.
So I used to hide from fire chiefs, and because every time they would come to my facilities, I would have to spend a lot of money on upgrades, things like sprinkler systems and scrubbers. And so today I'm kind of in a role reversal, and I have between 10 to 20 fire chiefs that I meet with every week. When they see Komodo in person, we deliberately set fires. So that's kind of cool because, I grab a torch and I set things on fire with them right there. But they ask the same question, how does this stuff work? What's the mechanism? And I'll try to answer it the best I can. So again, going back to our product, portfolio management and kind of the whole benign by design concept. That's something that we have done literally for over 3 decades. It's not something new for me. And it wasn't because we were trying to be clever. It wasn't that we were that much smarter. It was that the industry we were operating was very visible, and people were looking at the complete life cycle, not just what goes into making the product, but who's going to use it, what kind of an environment is it going to be used, and then what happens with it once they're done with it. What do we do with the waste? Where do we send it? And so when we say benign by design, we're really taking a holistic view of, can we use, for example, biomass? There's a lot of plant-based ingredients in our product, and that doesn't make my life easier. That makes my life harder, because I have to work with farmers and I have to work with processors that have to get moisture out of it and put it in a particle size that allows us to blend it and so forth. So we try to stay with obviously non-toxic materials. This product, Komodo, had to go through the USDA and US Forest Service certification. And that's the federal government. They get sued for a variety of reasons, and they have to comply with Freedom of Information Act. So when they put their name or their stamp of approval on a product, they're not looking for trouble. They're really doing their homework, checking our ingredients, our product against all the lists that are out there for clean air, clean water, clean soil, and so forth. In California, we have the EPA on the federal level, but we have DTSC or Cal EPA. And Cal EPA is several orders of magnitude even more stringent when it comes to environmental health and safety matters. So a lot of times they don't even accept the federal guidelines. So for example, we used to there were 49 state model vehicles, cars and trucks and motorcycles. And then California would get the California spec vehicle. So, and that went on for decades because of smog and so forth.
So it's more stringent there.
Yes.
And you're listening to Kauai Soapbox on Kauai Community Radio with Alana Marshall and Felicia. And on the air with us is Shawn Sahbari and Chris Satterfield. And what I would like to have the listener understand too, like this is a product that gets sprayed on the field, it gets sprayed on the house before things are burned or after things are burned. But can you tell us about like some of the people who are listening right now too are people who are heads of community associations, and so something that we're wanting to work with our fire department up in the not too distant future, and have been even already with business organizations, community organizations, even unaffiliated groups of people, if they want to learn how to help keep their neighborhood safe. We are working to help people understand how to cut the brush away from their areas. We're looking at a lot of different things that they can do for fire safety. What another big challenge that we have is just the design of Hawaii, where we are the perimeter of a circle. We have a lot of communities that are essentially like 1,500 people basically on a cul-de-sac, or maybe one road in, one road out. So when we saw this terrible fire in Lahaina, when there wasn't enough evacuation routes, well, 2/3 of Hawaii is designed that way. So we really need to think about what we're doing. So visualize yourself talking to some of these people who are listening, have community associations. How would they utilize your product? And I maybe want to let Chris, who is a fireman who goes or firefighter and deals with this, like Chris, if you were in there talking to a community association, how could they utilize this product in a way that would help keep their neighborhood safe?
That's a great question, and I get asked this frequently. Pre-treatment and putting strategic fire breaks in, to fire-prone areas, is a very smart thing to do. And with developments and perimeters of developments, and going in and putting a fire break in, the fire literally comes up to our product and it stops, and that's it.
And so that product is sprayed on the grass ahead of time, or sprayed on the land ahead of time?
That's correct. So our K500C product, which is very popular here in Montana, we've got a lot of very sensitive, water tributaries, as Hawaii does, and people are very passionate about it, and we don't like to spray, terrible, suspect, type things in our waters, and so pre-treating and spraying, a product that's going to withstand up to 4 inches of rain before it needs to be reapplied, is a blessing. There's nothing out there like it.
And when we were sitting talking, Shawn, he was a great salesman. We were having lunch together before even though you brought me in and showed me all this stuff. You, like many of our fire teams, have certain days off. You work. Last night was a big night for you, fighting this big wildfire. So thank you. I'm sure you're very tired, but so you said that like in your off days, you spray houses, or you spray, like people can hire you, and
Correct.
that way it's being applied. It doesn't have to be applied by a professional, but this is one way. When people have these bigger tanks of it, then like you probably buy it in the powder form, and then you mix it with water and you have a sprayer. So you spray it under the eaves and on top of the house. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, anything that it's applied to it's going to apply, a fire barrier to it. And it does work very good, to being applied to even, structures, homes, barns, outbuildings, things of that nature, children's, wood, anything combustible, outside. I mean, bushes, shrubs, the biggest problem with these wildfires, and the wildfires really in the last 10 years, is the embers. The embers are traveling, 3 miles ahead of the fire and starting, completely new fires. And, it does make sense to, pre-treat, and educating the public about pre-treatment, and it's very well received here in Montana because of the, catastrophic fires that, we've had around Yellowstone and, some different areas here in Southwest Montana.
And then Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to just chime in,
Go
and
ahead.
as Chris mentioned,
Go ahead.
this is a novel concept. We're moving from a reactive kind of mode to a proactive mode. In other words, our goal, I work with a fire chief here locally, and we had the largest wildfire in the Dixie Fire not too long ago. It was a year or two ago, and it was over 1 million acres. And he said that if there was somebody with a bucket of water at the right place at the right time, we would have been able to prevent the Dixie Fire. And I had to think about that a little bit. And like Chris mentioned, a lightning, a cigarette, a firework, or a chain being dragged behind an RV trailer, even the smallest form of a spark falling on dry vegetation can result in a disastrous, catastrophic monster. And we've seen it here near Lake Tahoe. We've seen it here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I live here, so we deal with it in California. So one of our marketing guys came up with a slogan, and I'm going to plagiarize, but he basically said we've got 3 killer apps in one product. What do we mean by that? So first of all, like an extinguisher, like water, like anything that you would use to suppress a fire, Komodo is like the Hulk. It absolutely knocks out everything that we've thrown at it, including, as you mentioned, Tesla lithium-ion batteries.
Mm-hmm.
So as a suppressant, it's just a very, very effective product. As a preventive solution, it's like a prophylactic. You can go in the beginning of summer, and we're working with the local power utility companies here. We're working with the local departments of transportation, because there are areas in Los Angeles and Orange County that they're notorious for burning and the Santa Ana type of winds, especially in late fall, around this time of the year. And so you can prophylactically apply the product in advance, even when there's no fire. And as Chris mentioned, should a fire come, it acts as a brake. It actually stops on that line. And then lastly, as a typical retardant, how you would use a normal fire retardant. So we're a suppressant, a preventative solution, and a fire retardant all in one.
Yep.
Okay, and then something that Chris and I were talking about in Poipu when he was here, right in that area, there was a group that put up 5 sensor products they're like got a solar panel on it. I can't remember which company it was, but I will look and maybe have them on another show. But they have the sensors, and it goes to a computer system. And so what Chris said is it can be triggered by sensors, and even have a spray system. So like maybe it doesn't apply it till it smells smoke upwind, and then that spray system can go. It's like a sprinkler. And do either one of you want to tell us about that?
I think, Shawn, you ought to talk about the dome right now.
Yep. So you saw the little can. I think if you were at the show last week, Chris asked to have those at the conference because there were a lot of fire professionals. That product really doesn't exist. In fact, technically, it hasn't even been launched. So if you have one of those cans,
I have 2 of them.
There you go. So and I'll share one of our guys in the Central Valley. His brother is a policeman and a motorcycle police officer. And I don't know where he got one of the early generation R&D cans, because I didn't even think we had labels for it back then. But he rolls up onto a car fire, and he's a police officer. He's not a fire professional. So he goes to his bike, grabs the little can of 911, and puts out the fire. The fire engine shows up, and they're asking him what happened. He shows them, this is how I put it out, and they were in awe. So, if you look at the little can, and I like to put things in kind of categories or buckets. You look at small, medium, large, extra large. The little can is a personal fire response. It's immediate, it's handy, it's inexpensive, disposable, 100% made in the USA, very safe. You could spray it in your face and it wouldn't harm you, right? So that's for the personal level. Then you go to our website or you go to Amazon, and we're one of the only companies that offer homeowners a do-it-yourself kind of a solution. So you can spend a few $100s or up to a few $1,000s, and we'll set you up with enough material, all the equipment that you need, a powered backpack that you can spray, up to an acre, larger properties if necessary. And then there are those that are busy. They don't get their hands dirty. They don't do-it-yourself projects on the weekend. So they will hire a professional. We have folks, Chris can do this. We have people in-house that do this. We also have companies that are contractors. They're professional firefighters, and they actually apply Komodo. In fact, before Chris joining us, he worked with a company that does this on a very large scale nationally for the insurance industry. They're
So
all
these are
professional.
private firefighters or private fire suppression companies.
Correct. That's correct. It's
Correct. And
Yep.
and they're guns for hire, right? So I don't want to use the
So those
Wagner group.
typically would be a larger landowner, or maybe a more well-off estate might hire something like that.
It could be
Yeah.
anybody, Felicia. I mean, it could be, like you were saying, a homeowners association. It could be a community that says, look, we are sitting ducks. There's only one way in and out. We have them here where I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so, even fire trucks can't get in and out. So they will pool together. In fact, I was going to mention the Fire Safe Councils. I'm not sure if you have access, but they're a nonprofit. We work with a number of them. I was on the phone this afternoon with the Santa Clara Fire Safe Council. Very, very effective way of teaching the community. We'd be more than happy to share videos, come and meet, do training, do demos. But this is, if we really want to make a change, and that's what gets me going every day. Okay, so I'm a product guy. At the end of the day, I don't need to be doing this. I've got other companies, and so. But Chris knows I'm heavily invested because, I believe that Fire Safe Council. If we don't solve this problem, fires for me is an environmental problem. Everybody thinks of smoke and smog and carbon emissions and soot and, loss of property and assets. All that is obvious. We all know that. But what you don't know is in the Paradise Fire, the EPA found about 1,000 ppm of benzene in the tap water.
Oh.
Now you're gonna ask, where is benzene coming from and why is it in the tap water? They literally had to hand out bottled water to the homeowners so they could brush their teeth.
And that was the campfire, that was in
The Dixie.
Paradise.
The Paradise, yes.
And we
Yes,
just had your county council person commissioner James Gore here at our county Hawaii State Association of Counties, and James Gore, who's from Sonoma County, who is going to be the next president of our National Association of Counties. He's dealt with the Camp Fire and the Santa Rosa Fire, and he was really engaging with us here about his fire knowledge. So benzene, how did the benzene get in the water? Was that after the fire or before the fire?
I won't tell you, because I struggled with that question for almost 2 years and nobody could answer that question. And I found out accidentally from one of our suppliers, but I won't get into how benzene got into the drinking water. You mentioned Santa Rosa. So my dad, in 2017, we lost our family home at 2:00 in the morning. The Tubbs Fire, I think it was called, came through that part of wine country, and a lot of people lost their homes, including my folks, as well as there were 10,000 vehicles that were burned. And I remember meeting with the Santa Rosa fire chief, and he and I were talking like this. This is 2018. So the fire was in October of 17. And in the spring of 2018, I was talking with him, and the EPA had come and created a bunch of collection yards, almost like junk yards, where they were collecting burnt vehicles, propane tanks. Because then think about it, it's wine country, it's rural. These people are on farms with tank and with septic. And anyway, long story short, I looked to him and I said, Jim, all these cars, all these burnt carcasses of vehicles, you know, there were hybrid vehicles, you know, there were battery powered vehicles, and even the gas powered cars and trucks, they all had lead batteries, they all had lead weight around their wheels. And in that type of a pyrolysis, you're going to have lead oxide, which is going to get airborne. We're breathing it. And it happened to be raining that day. And I said, this rain is washing it right into the storm drain. Your kids and my kids are going to be showering in lead.
Wow.
I mean, how, and he kind of shook his head.
Yep.
And he says, you're a materials guy. I'm sorry to say, we don't have a contingency. It's like an earthquake. There is no way to contain this. I said, well, what do you mean there's no way to contain it? It's in the soil, it's in the water table, all those chemicals, all those cars, everything all the soot that's all over the ground is now being washed. And the interesting thing he said, he goes, this is the most expensive real estate on the face of the earth. And we cannot call it a Superfund site. In other words, you got to live with it. And it was that point for me that I said, if we don't stop these fires or do our best in minimizing them or in containing them, the environmental problem that we're going to basically be dealing with a decade or 2 decades from now is going to become a real problem.
No,
okay, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to mention there's a lawsuit, currently, there's an environmental group out of Oregon that's suing the U.S. Forest Service, for airdrops being allowed in our water tributaries around, Montana, and it's a problem.
This is the slurry. That's at least what they called it when I was growing up. The slurry bombers dropping the red stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep. And it's a problem.
So I have 2 questions that are kind of specific to here. Like, we have a few communities that are similar to Lahaina with post and pier wood business structures that are almost built on the 0 lot line.
Right.
Waimea, Hanapepe, Koloa, especially in the commercial districts.
Sure.
So what I got pretty excited about when I saw your product is certainly I would want to still put like what they call it, like there's like fireboard that you can put between buildings, or somehow layer that in there. But I thought, well, maybe this would be a really good product to spray on those type of structures just to help it, because it, works like kindling. And one of the speakers in there, they called those Fox boxes or something, when he was, that was Scott Thompson from Texas. He was talking about people. I was realizing, well, I live in a Fox box, the little 1,000 square foot type of single wall wooden post and pier. That's a pretty common structure here because we're not Montana. We're not even Northern California. We don't have to have the kind of temperature help. We don't need walls with insulation and all that sort of thing.
Right.
So that could be one way. If what I really want to know before I really get 100% behind promoting this product, like if you got any of it on your hands, would you make sure you wash it really heavily with soap and water? What if you ate some tortilla chips with a little bit of a residue on your hands? Is that likely to hurt you or not?
I do it weekly. I don't recommend it, but when you're out spraying and it's windy, you're gonna have some that just comes back and lands on you. I was in Chicago and I was working with Illinois Department of Parks and Recreation, and we did a controlled burn of about 500, 600 acres, and I look like I was in a bakery when I got home at 10 o'clock at night. I got back to the
Yeah.
hotel. I was covered, literally. And so, it's very, very safe. We designed it that way. We didn't want it to work well, but then have some baggage. The other thing is, I think for communities, you mentioned Lahaina and or any of these types of structures, we learned that this is very much a distributed problem. And what I mean by that is we're located in Silicon Valley, and if Chris has a fire in Montana, there is no airline, there is no expedited service that's fast enough to respond to him. The only way that we can be effective if he has material on hand and he can respond within 15 minutes. That's it's like an ambulance and an accident or a heart attack. Having a very well equipped ambulance, 24 hours away is of no value. So when we say distributed model, a lot of folks live away from their, let's say, vacation homes. Let's say you have a home in Vail or Aspen, Colorado, or in Sun Valley, Idaho. And so we have come up with a product that we dubbed the Dome. We call it the Dragon Dome. And it's a very simple concept. It's basically a mobile unit. It's all self-contained. It doesn't need power. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need anything. It has sniffers, as you mentioned, on board. And there are apps that notify the owner that, we've detected a fire. We've confirmed that it's a fire. I'm going to deploy unless you tell me to stand down. And that unit has the ability to cover up to, don't quote me on this because my ops guys are going to probably be a little bit angry with me, but Chris knows. We started off with about a 4-acre footprint. We're shooting for about 7 acres. So what that means is we can put out a fire, we can create an exclusion zone or a fire break zone, roughly the size of 7 acres. And if you're in a dense forest, or if you're in what's, we call the WUI, the wildlife urban interface, and there's just no way to mitigate, this becomes the only answer. And in a Lahaina type of situation, or anywhere where you've got large area that you
one way in, one way out.
Yeah, egress, ingress type of scenarios, the Dome, we believe, is the answer. And it utilizes Komodo as the product, but there's also IP in terms of how we.
IP, what does IP mean?
Intellectual property. So just know-how, just the way that we actually mix the product, the way that we deliver the product, the way that we deal with wind, the way that we can decipher what is overcast or marine layer as opposed to real fire smoke. Mm-hmm. So all of those systems or systems of systems we have distilled into this kind of a mobile unit. And I was actually in Maui the week before Chris was, and we were not supposed to be at that event. I actually had one of the local fire chiefs. I actually talked with Chief Todd of the Big Island, and he brought it up. He says, Shawn, you really need to be at this event, even though it's sold out and even though it's very late. I said, look, I'm going to be in Maui because I'm going to be there to donate some equipment and materials and whatnot. So I don't think we can be in Hawaii, as much as I'd love it, 2 weeks in a row. But when I got back, I called Chris and I said, I think it's important that we are supporting the communities because, I got to go in behind the Red Cross, and I got an up close viewing with the Samaritan Purse guys in Lahaina, and it was heartbreaking what I saw. And
some of the properties there was at least 1 or 2 that did use Komodo. Is that correct? I heard that. Nobody had it there? No one had it?
No, we have not sent any to the islands at all.
Okay. All right.
And again, this is not we're not there to sell. We weren't even there to promote ourselves. I told Chris, I said, people are going to say, who's Komodo? Kind of like your questions. What is Komodo? We have to start the training and the awareness process that, okay, look, there are proactive things that can be done. You can either wait and let fires kind of control the day, or you can roll up your sleeves and do something about it. Best practices, clean up the backyard,
What was exciting for me, and this is with my county council hat on, that also has to sit there and worry a little bit about liability or just the chain of command that it takes to get something approved or not approved and everything else. What I liked with this is that private people could take their own responsibility. So if it is, one of these shopping centers, they could put their own dome up on the shopping center. They could proactively have their shopping center sprayed. There's we've been working with large landowners, and it costs a tremendous amount for them to have people full-time, cutting the fire breaks all the time. I'm not saying they shouldn't still do it. I mean, most of them don't do it right now. We moved away from sugar, and a lot of our large agricultural products, when they're not on the land, everything grows so quickly here that we end up with this overgrowth. And so what I like is a company, their company is a big landowner, could contact your company and maybe have one of these private services come over and train them and help them and make them be appropriate for this fire prevention. If the county wanted to take some of it on, Chris, does your fire department use it also, or is it mostly private?
No, we actually do use it, and I've actually used it about 3 weeks ago on a car fire, and it was highly successful.
And then I saw in your video there was plenty of shots of fire trucks where it seemed like the fire truck, the rig, was spraying the fire with this product in their fire hose. Did I watch the video correctly?
You did.
Blasting it out?
Yeah, so it can be added to a tank, and it's totally fine for fire pump tanks. It just needs to be agitated monthly. During fire season, most grass rigs, should be going out daily, or a couple times a week at least, which is sufficient. So totally safe though for fire pumps. That's a big question that comes up a lot, with fire professionals. Is it going to be tough on our equipment? That has not been our experience.
A lot of companies like it because of that, because the downtime and the replacement parts are problematic, especially in peak season. So they like the fact that we are not very hard on the equipment. So some companies actually keep it over the winter and just as Chris mentioned, just recirculate, agitate it, and then use it just like you would water. We dilute with water, so you're going to have a majority of what you're spraying is going to be water. That's the main solvent. That's what's actually the carrier. And whether it's in a prophylactic pre-treatment method or whether it's responding to an active fire, it's very easy to use. It's very safe for people. So, and we just want to get the awareness out. We just want to educate what is possible. So regardless of the small personal can or the multi-acre dome that is almost like a security guard, right? It's just sitting there 7/24, 365, and you're not wasting material. You're not, taking resources in terms of manpower and equipment and using it on a what if. It actually jumps into action when there's a risk of fire.
Think think of how many vacation homes are on the, the island of Kauai and all the islands, I mean, and the people that are not present there year round, it is a security guard, for fire. Absolutely.
And it's www.komodo-fire.com, right? So if people are listening, and I just want to acknowledge to you guys that this is, it just sounds almost too good to be true. If it, what I really hope the most is that it doesn't do any kind of environmental harm, because we have such a really fragile ecosystem here. Do you guys have any, I mean, you must have, it's probably on your website and I just haven't seen it yet, but do you have the type of tests after, chemical tests that show what toxins or lack thereof are in there, so that we know that it's good? You guys are nodding your heads, but they can't see.
Yeah, so
We do.
the government, as I mentioned earlier, before we even come up with a formula, first of all, it's a very expensive process. It takes years and not weeks and months, and it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is after you have the product identified, but they don't even accept the application until they have screened it against all the known kind of problematic ingredients, toxic ingredients. We look at things like restricted materials in the EU, and recognize that they're going to be dropping these category of products from the air. So with the prevailing winds and with reservoirs and streams, there is the possibility that it ends up somewhere where you didn't mean to put it. So,
like in the lungs of birds, of endangered birds, for example, they could be breathing.
Animals. I mean, they fed. I'll share just one data point with you. They feed it to 10-day-old rainbow trout hatchlings. And I got the report. We didn't kill any of them. They ended up euthanizing them anyway because as samples. So I didn't let some of the ladies in the office learn about that. But that's how non-toxic the product is, right? And so it's not Shawn or Chris saying that. It's the federal government out of Washington, D.C., basically saying that. And they check it on paper. They check it independently with third-party labs, and it's not even the federal government testing it. It goes to the best-in-class environmental health laboratories around the country, and they have to put their blessing on it. So, and we're constantly pushing the envelope, Felicia. One of my personal goals is to have an all-organic product, because here we have in Watsonville and Salinas, we grow, strawberries and artichokes. We also have a lot of organic dairy farms up in Marin County. And as you can understand, if you have an organic harvest or product and it sees anything that is chemical or problematic, they lose for 3 years their certification. So it's devastating, right? So we are hunting. We're not there yet, but we are not sitting idle. And the organic variant of Komodo, I can say, I don't know if legal is going to be happy, but I can say is in the works and will be coming soon. So
okay, and I have a list of questions that have come in. Okay,
sure.
So I know it's a proprietary product, which means you can't give us the specific ingredients, but are you able to say what the main piece is that makes it work? The main ingredient that makes it work, or is it like an oil-based piece with the plants? I mean, what makes it stay on the plants?
So let's see, without getting into hot water, so think of a mechanical protection. Okay, a mechanical protection, almost like a fire blanket. Okay, so
I gave a bunch of those away. I bought some, and I gave them away as gifts. They were fiberglass fire blankets.
yeah, so we're gonna introduce them because one of the guys wants to give them with the 911 product, and I said go ahead and source it. But so we form a almost glass-like film. So if you could think of glass in a liquid form, okay, this category of polymer is, we call them siloxanes. Basically, that's a fancy way of saying sand or glass. And so we form a mechanical shield, and that prevents the embers from starting fires. And it also starves the combustible fuel of the oxygen that it needs to burn. So we create like literally a blanket. Okay, so that's a mechanical mechanism. Then there's the chemical mechanism, and that is kind of a hybrid. It's not a singular, what is the main component? There is no main component. There are 10 ingredients, and they all have an active component. We found all the microsuppressants that are used to fighting fires, and we basically embedded them in volcanic rock. So think of the porous nature of volcanic ash. First of all, it's burned in nature already, so it has no more combustibility in itself. Secondly, when we park these elements, so think of N2. N2 is used to fight fires. Think of CO2. There are carbon dioxide systems that are used as suppressants. Think of P2O5. Okay, so there's enough, and water. We use H2O, but not moisture water, but the water of hydration that is bound in the matrix and is only released when it sees heat, when it sees the fire. So we have these microsuppressants that are activated, and then we also have the mechanical protection. So that's how we get these results. We do a fuel experiment with the 911, and I have scientists from Stanford, from Caltech, from Berkeley. They're scratching their heads and they're like, Shawn, can you describe what I'm seeing? And I'm telling them, I said, look, I've been doing this for 30 some odd years. I think I know what's going on, but I would be exaggerating if I told you I knew exactly what's going on. It just works, and it works well.
So here's a related question to that then. How does it coat leaves without inhibiting the transpiration or photosynthesis of the plants?
You know, people came to us out of Hollywood, and there were some salt or fertilizer-based compounds that really destroyed, without mentioning the actual clients' names, but you would recognize them. These are
famous people.
Famous people, you know,
Okay.
sports, athletics at the top of their game, and movie stars at the top of their game. Every single one you would know. And the damage that was done to their landscaping basically had to be addressed. So they came to us, we provided them with Komodo, and we don't harm, I don't know why, and we don't block photosynthesis. We don't even wilt, or, I mean, we've put it on spring blooms, and we haven't hurt the flowers.
And then if it, you know, I'm a permaculturist, so I look at the whole symbiotic nature of everything. So what if it is consumed consistently by insects, which are, you know, bioaccumulated in the systems of birds, etc.? I mean, has that been looked at all?
So we're working with the Department of Transportation in California, because they're looking at the prophylactic kind of preventive use. So they're doing a 4-year study. And obviously we will share that as soon as it becomes available. It's being done by independent labs, and they're not telling us anything. They just tell us, show up, spray this acre of land, and then we'll give you the results when we get the results. So that's something that's going on. What it does to insects, we have not tested. That's something that I know we have not tested. But again, the material breaks down, it's natural ingredients. We've had people that apply it to hay and to, feed, because they don't want it to burn accidentally, and they want to know what is the result on my cattle or my pigs or even horses. And the first time somebody asked me that, I said, well, we've never fed it to any animals, right?
Yeah,
But
that
we've done
occurred to
those
me.
tests and we have not had any adverse, reaction. So I can share that with you.
And when people use it in a place like Montana, it's likely that someone is grazing on it. I have another question that was given to me that is a little more scientific than I understand. So forgive me if I misrepresent the word. It says, does it contain salicylic silosines? Do you know what that is? Am I saying it right?
Does not.
Cyclic
D-
silosines.
Does not.
It does not. Okay,
Does not.
and it said specifically D4, D5, or D6, so it does
Does
not.
not.
So can you tell me what that is? What's a cyclic silosine? Do you know what it is?
Silazines are actually pretty nasty stuff. And so those are things that we don't entertain. We don't work with them. Siloxanes, like I said, is basically SiO2. Siloxane is like glass. So the simplest form that I could point you to, you're in a beach community, so sand.
Sand.
Right. So and SiO2 is very inert. It doesn't burn. There's no carbon in it. And we have a way of putting it into a polymer, okay, and functionalizing it. In other words, we attach things to it to make it do things we want it to do. And we actually use plant-based and believe it or not, some food ingredients that are even kosher. And so it's been blessed by the rabbi, right? So quite literally, I get the certification by the rabbi. And so but the concept again is manipulating the molecules to do what we want them to do. A lot of chemistry has to do with cost, volume, or bulk manufacturing, what is available. We don't look at it that way. We don't even consider the cost. In other words,
for the listener who might have just tuned in, this is Shawn. Am I saying your name right? Sahbari?
Correct.
Okay. Of Komodo-Fire.com. And if there's somebody who's maybe just tuning in recently, what we spoke about at the very beginning is that your background was in the semiconductor industry, and it sounds like you were doing some stuff relative to the fab and the actual production, the hardware production of these and you have a chemical background, engineering, and so that's why you know how to sort of put this molecules or this product together. Is that fair to say that?
That's very fair. Yes.
And then I know I just cut you off on something, but I'm looking at these letters, the D4, D5, or D6. So when I look at the can, I should have brought the can in with me. I was really excited about it when I saw how well it puts out a fire. It looks like amazingly, and doesn't even make a big mess. I'm sort of surprised about that too. Probably a little bit, but so it talked about fires that went A, B, C, D, and I think K or something like that. Can you tell us what those letters mean? Maybe this is more of a Chris question, but like
yes.
what? Or go ahead, Shawn, if you know.
Yeah, Chris is he is the fire expert between us. K stands for kitchen. I didn't know this.
Oh, okay.
One of the folks that does a lot of the nonprofit work with us, we've donated to different organizations and communities that have had losses, and we continue to do that. And he trains firefighters. So he's retired San Francisco Fire, and his job is to train other firefighters and extinguishers and whatnot. And he mentioned that the oil, like a fryer fire, okay, so think of KFC or French fries or I don't know, any other deep fried type of application. Those oils, those vegetable oils, they have a combustion or a flash point of around 600 degrees, 700 degrees.
Okay.
So, and when they ignite, there's a special type of an extinguisher called a K type of extinguisher. That's the only thing that puts it out.
Yeah.
So he challenged us.
What does A, B, C, and D mean?
Chris?
It's a, basic household fire, household goods, such as, just papers and cardboards and woods, things of that nature. Electrical fires.
How about the
would be one of-
lithium? Does lithium have a letter? Maybe we need an L.
I
Seems
think
like that's a big deal.
I think that one falls under, I want to say D. I think the electrical fire is like
It
metals
It
burning.
does. That's exactly what it is. Yep, it does.
So B is fuels. So if your gas can catches on fire, that's a class B. A is like the drapes in the house or the garbage can, as Chris mentioned, cardboard, paper, the grass, any kind of cellulosic material. And again, we're not really trying to displace the fire extinguisher. That's not our job. This request came out of medicine, believe it or not. And some folks that were working with the military, they said a lot of times nurses and doctors, if they're in a battlefield somewhere and a fire breaks out, they're not properly trained. They're not firefighters, and they may not even have an extinguisher. So how convenient would it be if they had something like a can of mace or pepper spray on their belt or in their backpack? So that request came out of the medical industry, and that's why we made 911. And we call it 911 because it's so fast, like a Porsche 911, right? It's not 911 like dial 911.
But
That's
it
a
could
nice
be that
coincidence.
too. It could be a nice coincidence.
Yeah,
They're going to be going in our wildland packs here real quick. I heard that a couple of days ago. They want all our guys to have a can of the 911 in our packs, to be out in the field with it.
Does your fire station need any special permit or insurance? Or I just, it seems like everything is racked with barriers. You can just put this in the, like you can't, somehow we don't give Narcan to our firemen. I don't quite know why we
No,
do it with police. I think they're in the ambulances, but so anybody can just have a.
yeah, and that one of the things that's really attractive, to fire professionals is the fact that Shawn mentioned that that we have the ability to get it to a fire ground very quickly. It's not listed as a hazmat, and we have the ability to fly it. Which certain products out on the market are not able to do that. So we're able to get the product if it's needed on a fire ground. We're able to get it there really quick.
So I want to put it out to the listeners, 808-826-7771. If anybody else wants to call in a question or two to our expert team here from Komodo-Fire, and I also am appreciating that we do have some county officials that if they would like to ask some questions, now is your time. I really appreciate that we do have our county government listening, and so I appreciate their vigilance with that. And so callers, if you want, 808-826-7771. Alana, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, but I'm just so grateful for all the very helpful information and great discussion on such a relevant topic.
Yeah, and that little handheld, it looks simpler than a regular fire extinguisher. Yeah,
right there.
Yep, he's got it right there. The listener can't see
It's like
it.
it's like a bear spray can, basically, is what it is. I mean, we know what those are here in Montana.
Yeah, we've got a shortage of bears over here.
Right.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the very intelligent questions that came in. I want to look to make sure I got all of them. Oh, here's one. There's one I didn't get yet. how often do you reapply during rainy season on North Shore Kauai? So, we outrain you guys over where you're at. Like you said, 4 inches of continuous rain, if you have an inch or two, that's not going to take it all off.
No, nope.
So
It'll-
it's a water-based product. You will eventually wash it off. So if there's a deluge, Florida type of, or the
Hawaii
Gulf.
type. We think we're the best in the world at deluging. Can we
deluge.
brag? 80 inches in a weekend up here. That's a lot.
That's a deluge. Yes.
That's a
yes, yeah.
deluge. That'll
That's
wash
a
it
deluge.
off.
So,
Wash
so
the
it
highway
will
off.
wash it off. And the request to make it kind of like I call it time release, almost like a medicine. We made it so that once you have a thin film that is deposited, and so the question is, how long will it stay there in the presence of precipitation and rainfall? So we simulated 4 inches of continuous rain, and then we also simulated up to 4 inches of half-inch rain at a time, intermittent, for a total of 4 inches. There's nothing magical about 4. We actually had excellent results up to 5 and 6 inches, but the lawyers won't allow us to say that because at some point, there's very little.
You got a guard band, right? You got a guard band. You got to be well within your boundaries.
Buffer zone.
It still works, but it is you're starting to dissolve it and wash it off. And so that request came out of the utility because they didn't want to apply, hundreds of miles of high voltage lines only to have to go back and redo it every time it rained.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know too, that it could go near and underneath the poles, the fire lines, the power lines. So thank you both. I want to give you both a chance to make a final comment. I'm very thankful that you took, more than an hour of time, especially after fighting a very big fire all night long, Chris. And Shawn.
I'm used to it.
Okay, you're used to it. So we'll start with you first, Shawn, and then we'll have Chris start first and then Shawn can finish. So Shawn, any final thoughts?
So I wanted to just thank you. I think this has been a very insightful interview, Felicia. I would tip my hat because you have asked all the right questions, all the pertinent questions. Our heart goes out to Hawaii. After having visited, I didn't come for pleasure. I didn't even come for business. We came because we just wanted to show solidarity. We wanted to say that, we're working on the fire problem. We don't have all the answers. We really don't. And there is no silver bullet. I got probably 24 phone calls after the Lahaina Maui. And I recall talking to Chris, and Chris said he connects with that part of the islands because of personal, in the past he's been there and for personal reasons. And so, when I visited and I saw some of the folks, the locals, and how hard it's been, really we want to make people aware of tools, and Komodo is just one tool. So we're not here to promote our product. This is a plug, obviously, and we are a for-profit business. I'm not trying to make us sound like we're here for benevolence, but the true goal and our motivation is bringing awareness, bringing education. If that makes us a better company, if the next product that we have solves the fire problem, then I've done my job. And I tell our guys, my dad's house burned, and I don't want to solve 50% of the problem. I don't even want to solve 10% of the problem. I think I will be very, very successful if we can save 1 out of 100 homes. And so that's our target, and we may get better. And I liken fire safety to car safety. A lot of times people ask me, well, what if I put this down and my house burns? I said, well, it's likely that's going to happen. Because we don't know all the different dynamics. We can't simulate or predict all of that. But, cars in the 50s didn't have seatbelts. Cars in the 80s didn't have airbags. Cars in the early 90s maybe didn't have anti-lock brakes. So these are all safety technologies. And today, you know, if in 2000 your car had an airbag, you were happening. Today, most cars have air curtains, and you know, there's dozens of airbag systems, and people still die in car accidents. So what I'm getting at is, should we like not have those safety features? No, we should. And our goal is to just inch, you know, closer to a total solution. And so we thank you for giving us the time and asking all the right questions. And I'll turn it over to Chris as the fire expert.
Felicia, thank you so much for inviting me and Shawn. And I want to be a valuable contribution to you know, the people of Kauai and the people of the islands in general. And as Shawn said, you know, if I've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen a product do what this product does. And you know, if I can save one house, and I've seen a lot of faces, you know, after, you know, somebody's house is burned to the ground, and if I can prevent seeing that ever again, you know, that's mainly the reason why I'm doing this, is to make a difference in the wildfire, you know, problem. So thank you so much for having us, Felicia. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and so I will wrap up with the thought that, you know, I don't normally really emphasize a product. It just, your products seem quite unique and a hopeful layer of what could help to minimize the damage that happened. And Lahaina was a town, or is a town, that was very special to me, and I really struggled over it because I know that same kind of thing could happen here. And it's conditions that have built up over, you know, decades,
Years.
generations, years. And then Marshall, do you have any thoughts that you want to add in here?
No, just thank you both very much for being here. Really great to hear about the product, and wonderful that if that can help us out. And thank you, Felicia, for bringing this information to us.
Super cool. Thank you.
Okay, and Alana, anything? Or you're good?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So thank you guys, and I'll send you a copy of this.
Sounds good, Felicia.
So
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Okay, aloha.
Pleasure meeting
Aloha.
you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.